What's up, everybody? This is my first ever podcast. I'm filming it, I guess. What time is it? It's like 12. 12 on Saturday morning. It's going to be a Saturday morning podcast. Hopefully have it uploaded for you guys to listen to every Saturday morning. I'm going to try and keep it consistent so that you can count on hearing me. I don't know what length yet. I don't really know what kind of format I'm going to have. I kind of have an idea of topics, but it'll just kind of be free-flowing, and we'll go from there. Today's podcast, though, I'm kind of just doing an introduction to who I am, why I want to do this podcast, things I'm interested in, things that we might cover, give you kind of a feel for what's going on and where we're going to go. This podcast is sponsored by Crown Royal. No, I'm just kidding. Try not to drink too much, but drink of choice. And so when I wanted to start this podcast, I thought long and hard about what would go into it. Because I like to talk, but I just talk about whatever, and that's something I pride myself in, having kind of a wide knowledge base as far as topics. I can talk about just about anything with anybody, and if I don't know right off, then I'll do a little research so that I can talk about things with them. I find small talk to be unbearable. I thought about doing a podcast probably about 4 years ago. Thought that it would be fun, it'd be a good idea, let some steam off. But I just didn't have any kind of drive whatsoever. I wasn't finishing college at that point. I was kind of barely scraping by. And so the podcast definitely fell by the wayside. I couldn't even be bothered to do work that related to graduating from college. So, time goes by and I think more and more about it. I learn more and more about it. And I decide that I'm going to do something about it. And so I went out and I got a computer and I got some opinions and some ideas. I've always had those. Borrowed a microphone and decided to just get to it. So, as an introduction for those who don't know me, I am Japanese. I was born in Japan, and I'm adopted. So, I kind of grew up in an interesting household because my dad is half Japanese, but grew up very American. His mother was Japanese and wanted him to do a lot of Asian things. She had him learn Japanese, but he resisted it. My mother is Caucasian. My birth mother obviously is Japanese. I'm full Japanese. So I had the family that looked right. I look like my siblings enough that people didn't ever really think about it. Like, oh, he's adopted. I don't think many people actually knew that I was adopted for the longest time. Because I just, I look kind of like my dad. I'm a just more Asian version. And, as an adult, I do look a little different than my family. But that created kind of an interesting dynamic for me because I was different. I wasn't biological. I wasn't actually physically a part of their family. But I was accepted as part of their family. They didn't treat me any differently. I know some adopted kids, it's kind of like a cool thing that they're adopted. Growing up, I didn't ever really hear about it. I knew that I was adopted, but they didn't make it a big deal. And so that was cool. I think I benefited from that as well as it hurt me. I am the youngest in my family. My parents had kids and then adopted me. I'm the youngest by about 6 years, a little bit under, and I'm the only boy. I have 4 older sisters. This was kind of interesting growing up because I didn't have any brothers, and I wanted one. I don't know. In my head, I thought it would be awesome to have a brother. And then as I've grown up and I've seen my friends with their brothers, I'm kind of glad I didn't have brothers. I am happy with the fact that I had sisters, but honestly, they were so much older than me. I pretty much grew up an only child, and I didn't have to share anything. I mean, even when I was younger and we all lived in the same house together, they shared rooms. I didn't share a room. I had my own space. I had, you know, my own spot because I was the only boy. And I think it was hard for me growing up being the youngest because I felt like there was all these expectations piled on. And I don't know. I don't think I ever lived up to very many of them. I'm pretty smart. I graduated from college, but it kind of took a while, and it was kind of a struggle at times. My parents are both Ivy League educated. They both went to Cornell University, and so education was always very important in my household. We were always taught that school came first. School came before everything. So my sisters, they all worked hard. They all had like good genes, obviously. My parents were smart. They put in a lot of work, but they were just smart people. They still are. My sisters were all like valedictorian level students, and they worked so hard. And a couple of my sisters are just brilliant. The way that they think about things and they come up with these ideas, I'm speechless a lot of times. And so all of this kind of rubbed off on me. I had a love of learning. I still do. Partly why I want to do this podcast, because I'm just so interested in a lot of things and I want to talk about all sorts of things. I don't really have an outlet because, I don't live at home. I see my parents when I see them, but I don't want to talk their ear off when I'm over there exploring whatever. And so I feel like growing up, I didn't live up to a lot of expectations as far as grades. I wasn't a bad student. I had a 3.9 GPA in high school, 29 on the ACT. I felt like I was in a pretty good spot. But I wasn't like high caliber academic scholarships to college. And so I kind of felt like an outsider. I don't want to say that I didn't fit in my family, because I did. But when I put these accomplishments up on the wall next to everybody else's, it started to sink in, really, that I was not anywhere close to what they were doing. And as an adult now, I've talked to my family members, I've talked to my parents especially, about feeling like this, and they almost laugh at it, because these were things that I put out on myself. I was the one who decided that they were in this whole different echelon of intelligence. They'd never thought, oh, well, Sam's kind of dumb. Like, he doesn't do well in school. They never thought that, because they were able to find all these things that I did do well, and that's what they focused on. And so all this pressure that I had basically was in my own head and made by myself. And when I heard that just it kills me, because I was like, there was a lot of times when I could have done something that I didn't do because I felt bad that I wasn't doing well enough, when in reality I was doing just fine. I think being an only child kind of growing up, because my sister graduated from high school, went off to college right about the time I started middle school, I believe. And I think it really messed with me a little bit. I've always been pretty shy, because I don't think I had very many interactions with other people. I've always been kind of an introvert. I preferred being at home, and when I was home, it was quiet. There wasn't anyone home. My mom was home. She was a stay-at-home mom. But it kind of resonates with me, being an only child, how difficult it actually is. There isn't the chaos in your own personal home, so it doesn't really prepare you for the chaos at school, in the workplace, things like that. So I tend to withdraw. So, man, middle school was rough. I went to the middle school with the Alps program, with like the gifted program. I don't know if I would have done that looking back. I think going to Midvale was a good experience. It was a completely different demographic, that's for sure. I grew up in South Jordan, which, it's white. It's a suburb. It's white. It's affluent. And then I went to Midvale, and it was minority kids. It was poor. It was just, everything was different. And I think that was a good experience. I definitely learned to appreciate where I was at, what I had. And I was also empathetic about other people's situations. And I think that's ultimately why I am the way I am. It was hard to make friends, though, because I didn't live near anybody. And the people that I was friends with, I didn't really see them very much. It was kind of a different time. My parents weren't about to let me just hang out over in Midvale by myself with all my friends and just run around. I was pretty sheltered, I guess, until high school. Even mostly through high school. It was not until the summer before my senior year that I really kind of cut loose as far as having experiences in the world. And so my friends were my neighborhood friends that lived around me, but we didn't go to the same school, so there was disconnect. They would talk about teachers that they had and all these activities and stuff, and I was like, oh, that's cool, I don't know what you're talking about. But, I guess I wanted to feel included, so I'd hang out with whoever would hang out with me. But honestly, I think that I didn't have a lot of friends until high school, and even then I didn't have a very big circle. When I went to high school, I branched out from Midvale, went back to Bingham, so all the friends, that I'd had at school, I didn't get to see them in the hall when I got to Bingham first day of 10th grade. I had people that I knew from my neighborhood, but it was a completely different feel, and it was basically like being the new kid again. I mean, people would say hi to me, and people would be nice, but I didn't have these friendships that I'd had from, elementary school to middle school, and then finally to high school. Bingham was very cliquish, just like I think every high school is, but especially at Bingham, I think it was very pronounced. If you didn't look a certain way, if you didn't dress a certain way, if you didn't do what everybody else did, you really didn't fit in very well. And I know that, now it's like, who cares about fitting in? No one cares about fitting in, but in high school, that's really important because you want to feel accepted, you want to feel like you matter. As you always matter, but to feel like you have the admiration or acceptance of your peers, that's kind of a difficult thing to have when you're not like everyone else at the school. And I definitely felt like that because there were probably 5 Asians or 6 Asians at the high school, and the rest of the people were white and Polynesian, and even the Polynesians were 2% of a 2,400 student population, not very many at all. A lot of these things that I went through, they weren't just society trying to punch me in the face. A lot of it was self-inflicted. I was weird. I won't lie to you. I was really different, and I was kind of angsty, like teenage angst hit me like none other. You know how when you're in a relationship sometimes your girlfriend or boyfriend, they screenshot you. You know, you say some shit and it gets screenshotted and then it comes up later in arguments and you're like, nah, I never said that. And they're like, hold on, wait a minute, let me pull this up, and they show it to you and your stomach just drops because you're like, well, it was nice seeing you, it was nice knowing you, but I just got caught lying to you. Facebook has this thing, these memories, Facebook memories. And that is the most damning screenshot of all. That is like what you were doing on this day 8 years ago, 9 years ago. I've seen posts from 2009 back, I think I joined Facebook in 2008. I've seen posts from early days of Facebook that I had, and I can't believe it. I'm like, who is this kid? Who is this piece of shit kid? It's not me, that's for sure. I mean, at the time it was me. I was angry, and I would say some of the most ridiculous things, and I'm like, man, no wonder I didn't have friends. I was an ass. Like, I was rude. I was crude. I just, there was a lot going on that I couldn't believe that those words came out of my mouth or through my fingertips onto a computer screen. There's no logical explanation for it. I really don't. I don't know. I enjoy looking back at that, and I go through those. Sometimes I get a chuckle because I was like, man, I was kind of funny back then. You know, I had some things that were pretty funny, but then I kind of realized, you know, there was a lot to being an outsider, and I think that it perpetuated itself. I felt out like an outcast. I felt like I wasn't included. I lashed out about it, and that just pushed me farther and farther away from being accepted and being in, you know, the norm. I think maybe later in the podcast I'll like go back and reminisce about middle school and high school. I don't really want to dwell on that right now, but just kind of an introduction to me, you know. High school was tough. I don't think many people look back fondly on high school as adults. They're like, man, that was weird. Did some really weird stuff with a lot of weird people. But I think some people's experiences were definitely better than others. For me, it wasn't great. And on that note, I was so excited to move out and go to college. But I didn't do college the traditional way. We had concurrent enrollment, and so I didn't like AP. I took 2 AP courses in high school. I liked one of them, hated the other one. I didn't do any of my AP statistics homework. I copied it off a buddy of mine. AP biology, I enjoyed it, but I enjoyed science. So concurrent enrollment was kind of the way that I went about things. And that was basically taking college classes in high school. What this meant was I was getting actual college credit and doing high school amounts of work. Now, for some people, you know, you don't really understand what that means. But the workload, from high school to college is just on a completely different level. I mean, you can get by in high school with doing the bare minimum and getting a passing grade. I did really well with that. You get to college, if you're not really working pretty hard, you kind of get left in the dust on some things. So I did concurrent enrollment, and I amassed a huge amount of college credit. Then my senior year, I did the tech center, which was cool because it gave me an opportunity to learn something, like learn a trade. Some people had like trade school. I did this surgical technology program, which it was fairly prestigious, I guess. There were 19 or 21 spots in the program for the whole district, and I was one of them. And I went into that program thinking it was going to be the greatest thing ever. I didn't have to be at high school half the day. I'd go over to the college. And so I continued to amass these college credits. So when I graduated, I had like two courses that I needed for an associate's degree. And I was like, score. This is great. I don't have to pay for college like I would normally have to, because concurrent enrollment was something like $30 or something, like, for the class. Not hundreds of dollars per credit. And it didn't benefit me at all, okay? I did get an associate's degree really quickly. I was in this program to be a surgical technologist. I became a certified surgical technologist. So by the time I was 19 years old, I had a degree, I had a certificate. But where did that leave me? I didn't know what I wanted to do, because around that same time I got pretty sick. Dealt with some health issues. And so all my plans, I guess, just kind of went by the wayside. I was pretty lost at that point, but I knew that I wanted to go on with college. Didn't know what I wanted to do, because initially I'd wanted to be an anesthesiologist. That's a joke. There's no way I would have wanted to do med school after, doing school, after working in a hospital. That's not for me at all. Money's not even worth it at that point. And so I looked at it from the other end. I like business. I thought business was interesting. I thought maybe I could run hospitals. That way I could still be in the mix with medicine, but I'd be on the payroll side of things. I'd be on, facilities, whatever it would be. It wouldn't be medicine, but it would be involved with it. Because I've always had a passion, I guess, for helping people, wanting to be helpful, wanting to heal people, whatever it was. And so I needed some kind of outlet. So I started at UVU, Utah Valley University, with all these credits. I transferred my associate's degree, so I didn't have to take any generals. I moved down to college. This was the first time I ever moved out. I moved down to college. I thought it would be a great experience. It really wasn't. I had roommates that didn't go to school. UVU didn't have dorms. So it wasn't student housing. I didn't move down to National Lampoon. I didn't move down to this ideal college situation. I moved down basically to a bigger version of high school. Utah County is a whole different animal. I'll probably revisit that as well. But people there don't go to school and live at school. A lot of them live at home in Alpine or Lehigh or Pleasant Grove, and then they just commute to school and then they leave. So you didn't meet a lot of people on campus that, lived around you. They're like, oh, I live with my parents, up in Alpine. And so college wasn't what I thought it was going to be. And so I wasted a lot of time. I didn't go to class. I had a drinking problem. But it wasn't like we're going to party at college drinking problem. It was, I'm going to drink in my room drinking problem. We weren't allowed to have alcohol in our apartment. We'd have these apartment checks, these room checks. We'd have to hide the alcohol in creative places. I'd stick it in shoe boxes or something, and then put the shoe boxes into a stack on the wall. It was a different and difficult time for me, and it really took a serious upheaval in my life to kind of figure out what I was going to do. And it's weird because that serious upheaval was a breakup, but it messed me up pretty bad. And so I went to a counselor, and the counselor did not tell me anything. I was paying this guy $100 an hour to not tell me anything. And ultimately, I guess he steered me in the right direction. He basically said that if I wanted something, I needed to do it myself. I couldn't wait around and have something happen, because that's not how it worked. So at that point, I'd been in school for a year and a half or 2 years. Should have been finished with my degree. Should have had a bachelor's degree. But I changed my mind on my major. I decided business administration wasn't what I wanted to do. So I switched to community health education. Thought that I could do health administration. Decided I didn't want to do that. So I switched again. And just did the emphasis in teaching. When I switched to the emphasis in teaching, my academic advisor was like, hey, you only have, this many credits. I calculated it, and I was like, I could finish in 3 semesters. I could be done by May. This was like right before summer semester. She's like, well, do you think you can do that? I was like, of course I can do that. That's 12 credit hours, and then 14 my last. That's cake. Whatever, I can do that. And so I buckled down and I went and did it. And I'm so embarrassed at this because prior to those 3 semesters, my college GPA at Utah Valley was like a 1.4. Okay? Let that sink in. A 1.4. This is coming from someone who freaked out because he got a B plus in high school. We got 1 B plus ever. Okay? And I had a 1.4 GPA. That equals like what? A C minus, D average almost. Like, awful. So embarrassing. My last 3 semesters I got straight A's. Couldn't believe it. Well, I could because I'm smart, I'm just lazy. And a lot of it had been just purely not trying and wasting my college experience. Wasted a lot of money that my parents paid for me to go to college because I failed classes. And that still doesn't sit right with me, but it is what it is. I finished up and I was so excited and gung-ho. And I thought, life's going to be better when I graduate from college. I'm going to have a degree. Things are going to be better. And that's what my life has been essentially, is hopping from one spot to another. Man, high school sucks. Things will be better when I'm in college. Get to college. Man, college really sucks. Once I'm out of college and in the workplace, things are going to be better. And so it was almost like a checklist to me. I decided, I'm going to go to work. I'm going to try and get a job in my profession, my field, whatever. And that didn't happen. I applied all over, and I just kept coming up empty on everything. And it was getting frustrating because in my head, this checklist wasn't working. And so I was self-sabotaging myself by feeling like I was a failure. Even though I'd gone through all these steps, I was like, what a joke. What an absolute joke, because I can't get a job in my field. I didn't take into consideration that to work in my field, you probably needed a master's degree. To work in my field, you probably needed to be CHES certified. These are all things that I could have done that would have helped me in my field, but I sat there and poor me. It's not working out for me. And it hasn't actually been until recently, within the past couple years, because I graduated 3 years ago from college. The past couple years have been really just deep thinking about what is my life doing, where am I going with it, what do I want it to do. It's no longer a checklist. It's no longer pass-fail. For me, happiness is really the most important thing. It should have always been that way. What am I happiest doing? And I've had to think about this because it was so ingrained in my head that this is what my parents kind of always had for me. You go to school, you get a job, you go to work. Okay? you provide for your family, you get married. They kind of had their own checklist. It wasn't really a checklist, but these are the things you do to be happy and be successful. And they would just reference back to themselves whenever this was an issue. And I was like, that's great. It worked so well for you guys. My parents are happy. They've been married, almost 40 years. They celebrated their 39th wedding anniversary in April of this year. They've been married very long time. Very happy. Tons of grandkids. I mean, that's kind of sad. I don't even know how many nieces and nephews I have. I'd have to sit and count. I think it's like 22 or something like that. But this was the archetype that they wanted me to follow. And quite frankly, that's just not who I am as a person. And that's not what I've done. And so, that's not to say I'm not happy and I'm not going to be happy. It's just taking me on a different path. I've really had to step back and kind of think there's more to it than this checklist. You kind of have to put everything in context, which I love context. The idea of context is amazing to me, and I think about it all the time. Everything in this world comes down to context. I want to have a whole podcast on context, so I won't go a lot into it right now, but you step back from your life. Sometimes you get so involved in living your life and being right in the mix that you don't see what's going on with it. Have you heard that expression, you can't see the forest through the trees or whatever? Like you are so in the mix that you don't see what's actually happening. And when I heard that, it just hit me like this ton of bricks. I was like, are you kidding me? That's exactly what I'm doing. That is exactly how I've been living. And it's been killing me. I didn't realize how many good things I had done. How many relationships that I've had that were great. I'm not talking like girlfriend relationships. I'm talking relationships with people I've met. I can't believe how many good experiences that I've had that have shaped me into who I am. It's all about context. It's all about what are we doing with this life that we've been given. Are we concerned with comparing it? Because, quite frankly, if you compare your life to other people's lives, you're never going to be happy. There's always going to be someone who's better looking, more fit, has more money, has a better situation. No matter what you do, you will never be happy if you always compare what you are doing with someone else. And I had to learn this. I had to learn it the hard way, kind of. I had to waste years feeling bad, feeling depressed about it. All you have to do is compare yourself to where you were yesterday, where you were a year ago. That's why Facebook is great. Where were you 8 years ago? Making some status about how much I hated Mexicans or something like that, and then getting into a fight with a Mexican on that status. Kind of just ridiculousness. I mean, absolute, just awful. Am I better than I was 8 years ago? You bet. Am I better than I was 4 years ago? I sure hope so. Was I better than I was earlier this year? Yeah, I am. And I'm grateful for that opportunity. I'm grateful that you can step back out of your life a little bit and give yourself some pause. Like, hey, hold up, take a breather. You don't need to take life so seriously all the time. Because if you do, life sucks and then you die. That's what happens to you if you take life too seriously. I'm so excited for this opportunity to kind of share who I am on this podcast with, the 12 people who listen or whatever. I hope to have more. I don't really know where this is going to go. It would be so cool if it took off, if it became something. But that's not the focus of it. Focus of this is to talk. I'm going to talk your ear off. I'd love for people to listen to it and maybe get something out of it. I have all these topics that I want to go over. Just amazing things that I've learned. And I want to put a lot of work into this. I've researched topics. I love sports. That's going to be a topic. I absolutely love sports. And I could talk about them probably all day. I could make hours and hours of podcasts just on the NBA playoffs right now. But I want to talk and educate. I want people to learn something when they leave. I want them to be able to say, oh, guess what I heard on this podcast that I listened to? And then tell their friends. I don't know where it's going to end up, but I know I'm going to have a great time doing it. I hope that I don't get too boring or whatever. I can see myself being boring. Some of the things I'm interested in, people are definitely not interested in at all. I lose a lot of listeners when I talk for 40 minutes on how LeBron James is better than Michael Jordan, in my opinion. Controversy. I'm not always going to say the most politically correct things on this podcast. I don't plan on being politically correct, because that's not genuinely who I am. I try my best not to step on toes, but that's just out of respect for other people. That's not necessarily me not being genuine, but I believe that you can have respect without, caving, which some people, it would be great if they learned that the other way. You don't have to have an opinion and be a dick about it. You can have an opinion, you can share your opinion, you can be a full on all about your opinion, but you can still respect other people's opinions. The great thing about this is that I get to talk to myself. I get to talk to an audience. And so I don't have to sit there and try and take in everybody else's opinion on what I'm talking about. This is purely me talking about it. I'd love to have guests on. I have a couple in mind. I want to have interesting conversations. I have people that I can talk for hours with because their minds are just so different than mine. I'm excited for that. I'm excited to have, once I figure out all the technical Skype call, whatever, for these different people that, are out of state, I'm going to have them on. I have a couple people I need to reach out to who are local, have them on the podcast, and honestly, we'll just chop it up. We're just going to have fun with it. I'm going to try and shoot to keep these about an hour. They may be longer depending on if I have someone on. If I have a guest on, I'm not going to limit it to an hour. It'll really be as far as, if they want to talk for 2-3 hours, fine. I'm not going to cut them off. Because I want this to be genuine, honestly. And I'm excited. I'm excited to see where it goes. I think I'm going to end this one a little bit early, just because it's pretty late right now. I don't know if I'm going to be able to record these when I get home from work on Friday nights. Or be ready for Saturday, but I'll try my best. I would love to take questions as well. Like, if you want to reach out to me and talk about a topic for a podcast, you can reach me. I have a Gmail set up. It's Sam Reese's Pieces at gmail.com. Just like the candy, ReesePieces. That's kind of the working title for the podcast. I'm not 100% sure if I'm going to keep it, but that's the email you can reach me at. If you have my number, obviously, you can hit me up on that. I'm not going to put it on this podcast. I don't want, like, some random person hitting me up and being like, oh, I heard your podcast and thought we could talk about cats. Probably not. But I love feedback, and I'd love to get with more people. If you want to be on the podcast and you want to talk about a topic, sure, why not? I'll have you. You just have to realize it'll probably be pretty late, or we'll tape it special, in the middle of the day on Saturday or Sunday. And I hope that you enjoyed this first episode. Once again, Sam Reese's Pieces. We hope to continue this every week. It's kind of a daunting task, and it's intimidating. But I am glad that I started this, and I can't believe that I just talked for 41 minutes. And I guess until next time.